President Trump and Kim Jong-un's historic meeting back on the negotiating table.
We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens.
Donald Trump has complete control of the situation. The left is desperate at this point.
The revelations that an FBI informant possibly inserted into the Trump campaign in 2016. Former CIA Director John Brennan has been very vocal on this and attacking the president.
He's a master of mischaracterization and dishonesty. To label someone as a spy when they're a confidential human source, I think, is doing a disservice.
President Obama says there weren't any scandals during his administration.
There were a lot of scandals, but the difference was there wasn't a scrutiny. The press wasn't a watchdog. They were a lapdog.
Not just Fox, where they are essentially delivering propaganda. We need more people to speak up and speak out.
You don't give up, you don't give in, and you never surrender. God bless America, and anchors away.
Let me show you how country feels. Get your hair down, get you some of this laid on back. Kick your shoes off, kick them off, get you some of this slow down.
Is your mouth watering yet? Pizza's been all morning long.
We've got barbecue from Brooklyn, we've got barbecue from Dallas, we've got barbecue from New Jersey, we've got barbecue from Texas, we've got barbecue from everywhere.
Shockingly, we still have barbecue because Pete has been eating most of it.
we've got a lot of sailors and Marines down there that have been consuming as well because we're coming up.
Well, it is Fleet Week, and so it's a great reminder of our men and women who serve every single day for all of our freedoms, but also Memorial Day weekend, those that have sacrificed, that have lost their life for us all to live the life that we live.
So we are having a party out here. We're having a barbecue extravaganza because you'll probably be grilling, right? This weekend.
Everybody's grilling, and they're sending photos.
You'll be you're sending in your photos. That's exactly right. To our hashtag Proud America. We've got there's a couple sailors there enjoying a little barbecue. This is a photo. Eric in Georgia sent this photo of crosses lining a street that he says are put up every year by local Veterans Association.
That is a beautiful shot right there. All right, this comes in from Ken. Says this photo in Michigan showing his patriotism and love of the flag. It's a great one.
And email us at friends@foxnews.com if you want to remember somebody this weekend. I know I'm going to tease it. I have a few Marines I want to remember that I was with during the invasion of Iraq. But if you have somebody, please send it to us because this day is about remembering those that have paid that ultimate sacrifice, and that is fore and foremost, along with the barbecue and the party going, but we have to not lose context of this important, significant weekend. And of course, breaking news, significant breaking news. We have to get to. It's a reporter in me, and it's a busting to get out. Bring it, Griff.
News alert, Griff. Go ahead.
Kim Jong-un and South Korea's President Moon Jae-in meeting overnight. This is President Trump teases that his face-to-face meeting with Kim Jong-un could still happen, and it could still actually happen in Singapore on June 12th. Here's the president.
We're going to see what happens. We're talking to them now. It was a very nice statement they put out. We'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens.
Now, I wanted to give that soundbite just because we are in the midst of cascading events, right?
Yes.
South Korea and North Korea stopped talking to each other. Then North Korea didn't show up for the planning meeting for that summit. The president sent that letter, pulls out. But now this meeting just north of the DMZ in North Carolina with President Moon.
North Korea, you mean?
In North Korea, sorry.
He's got
barbecue on the mind.
I do. It's very significant because we are told, and this is initial reports, that they did discuss the summit still taking place.
So we've got the photos coming into our newsroom. This is breaking news. This is the first time the two leaders have met, as you said, Griff, since the president pulled out of that meeting. You remember this all started back in April, the first time these two leaders met. They met on the DMZ, but it was South Korean soil. It was the first time Kim Jong-un stepped foot on South Korean soil in decades. This time, overnight, the meeting happened, as we're told, still at the DMZ, but on the North Korean side. So we don't know exactly what was said in this meeting between these two leaders, but what I will say is the president of South Korea talks all the time with President Trump. They know exactly where they want to go with this summit. They want to communicate together on this. So it's really important to make sure they're on the same page, talking with Kim Jong-un, because they've got to have the same understanding of what it means to denuclearize. That's what it's all about.
And you can play a little good cop, bad cop. You're working together on this, but it's clear Kim Jong-un wants that meeting with President Trump. I mean, this is a reiteration of that. Okay, we'll come back to the table. Oh, just kidding. All that bad stuff we said about John Bolton, all that bad. We'll take that back. I mean, ultimately, President Trump is setting the terms of this discussion because the end state is a really, really, really difficult one, which is getting a brutal terrible dictator to actually give up his nukes.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't happen.
Which will be very difficult if you give the context. Remember, this all starts in 1994 with Bill Clinton, and we've essentially appeased North Korea. Yes. They've tried to say they're going to back away. But now we're talking about the most historic meeting between the President of the United States, the leader of North Korea, and actually bringing peace on the Korean Peninsula. But here's the thing. The letter was the first time you've had direct contact between the President of the United States and the dictator of North Korea. And clearly that had some impact here because you've got Kim Jong-un and President Moon meeting early this morning.
And that direct contact is so important because up until this point, they've only been communicating via our media outlets. And you mentioned John Bolton, Pete. And that is why it's so important that we communicate exactly what we want to North Korea and vice versa. Because when you have folks like John Bolton and even Mike Pence talking about the Libya operation, that can get us in trouble because the way the North Koreans see it is, well, Gaddafi was killed in that operation. Yeah. That's obviously not how we want this to end. So now President Trump, when you listen to his tone, he wants this summit to happen. He wants to make this work. Now he's talking to Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea, saying, communicate with him exactly where we are on this, and let's see how we can move forward, where we can go from here.
And when you read that letter, it was clear it was dictated by President Trump. I mean, that was in Trumpian form with the blunt statement of we've got massive nukes and we don't want to have to use them if we don't need to.
But we will.
But we know you got our phone number. Call us if you actually want to. It's inside the psychology of Kim Jong-un. He has to actually believe we will attack them, that we will bomb North Korea to prevent that. And if he does, then he'll come to the table and say, all right, let's figure this out.
And that is the key, getting to the table. Now, Democrats, you saw Nancy Pelosi and others have criticized the president for basically giving Kim Jong-un what he wants. He wants international status. He wants to be seen, and he's, having to essentially give up nothing other than shutting that nuclear site, which we don't have any proof that it actually did do anything. But, the fact that this letter and these events, the way the president and this White House has strategically planned it, has gotten them to the table. It was called off by the president. Now you see these talks. You're going to hear a lot more about this story this weekend.
And don't forget,
this is a development that is very significant.
And you talk about all the pieces that are involved and what a delicate balance this is. We haven't even talked about China. And China continues to be probably the biggest part of this whole deal, this part of this this conversation, because they're the ones that are working with North Korea. They keep North Korea afloat. I mean, China is a very big role here. A lot of people suggested it was because of China ultimately that caused Kim Jong-un to back off or to say some of the things that he said that made President Trump walk away from this thing. So it'll be interesting to see how China responds to this, if North Korea will then meet with China before this ultimate summit. There are a lot of things at play here and a lot of personalities.
Because the last time North Korea met with China, they came out singing a different tune.
Right.
Because
remember
President
that?
Xi, exactly.
He took that train ride to Beijing.
A lot of different moving parts here, but you look at that embrace right there. That's two peoples who have been pointing guns at each other for 70 years with a war that never ended. A lot of families separated by that DMZ that would love to see that denuclearization and even reunification potentially represents a lot of history, that photo.
So
right
everyone out there who says this thing has failed, that, this is a failure on the president's part, let's be very careful, because this is about potentially creating a lot more peace on the world stage. And you see these leaders there. This is breaking news happening overnight. These things take time. A lot gets put into an ultimate summit. If it comes to that, a lot of it takes patience. So everyone needs to take a backseat here, let this play out, let diplomacy do what diplomacy does, and honestly trust the president. That is his role. Trust the advisors around him, and you all want to hope for the very best here.
Speaking about taking time, the president took time to shake every single midshipman's hand at the Naval Academy. Speaking at their graduation and commencement speech, here was the president talking to the midshipmen at the Naval Academy.
Each of you enters service at a truly exciting time for our country. For we are witnessing the great reawakening of the American spirit and of American might. Yes, America is back. I was given an option. I could make this commencement address, which is a great honor for me, and immediately leave and wave goodbye. Or I could stay for hours and shake hands with 1,100 and something. What should I do? What should I do? I'll stay.
And stay he did. He stood and shook every graduate's hand as they walked across the stage. We won't play all of them for you, don't worry.
All right, you've convinced me. I will stay. I will shake every single hand.
Why
And he did.
not?
He did that.
He did. I love his appeal to patriotism. Just love your country.
And what a message to those graduating that are ultimately going to go out and fight for this country and fight for our freedoms, to say America is number one. We are stronger than we've ever been. And if we ever do have to go out and fight, if you have to be in that role, we win, because that is what America does.
Great point. And my message to the midshipmen is I apologize for calling you cadets in an earlier hour and being
midshipmen.
For
Griff, I think the troops love you.
We still love you, Griff.
I know where your heart's at. We love it.
All right, well, a lot going on this morning, some breaking news, but also some headlines I want to bring you as well coming into our newsroom. A teacher being hailed a hero this morning for tackling a school shooter inside his Indiana classroom, saving countless lives. This is Jason Seaman, reportedly shot 3 different times as he swatted the firearm out of the gunman's hand at Noblesville West Middle School. Watch this.
I'm really grateful for him to be there, because without him, I'm not sure if all of us would have made it.
Wow, a bullet striking 13-year-old Ella Whistler just moments before Seaman's fearless takedown in his 7th grade science classroom. The teen is now in stable condition. The 29-year-old teacher is recovering and said to be in good condition. Seaman, a husband, father of 2, also coaches football at that middle school. The unidentified gunman is now in custody. His motive remains unclear. Also, disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is out on bail. Weinstein posting $1 million after turning himself into the police. He is being charged with rape and sexual abuse. He now must wear a GPS device. Dozens of women have accused him of sexual crimes. Weinstein denies these accusations, but he now faces more than 37 years in prison. He must decide by Wednesday whether he will testify. And hundreds of new troops are heading to our southern border. 736 National Guardsmen will be deployed to California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. The National Border Patrol Council president calls the deployment a colossal waste. But Acting Deputy Commissioner Ronald Vitiello is grateful for the support. Take a listen.
They've made about 4,000, directly attributed to them about 4,000 arrests, almost 3,500 pounds of marijuana and other things that they've done for us. And we're going to continue building that capability and use them to their fullest extent.
President Trump has approved up to 4,000 troops total to go to the border. Speaking of President Trump, he is thanking one of his departing Marine helicopter pilots by greeting his family on the White House lawn. The commander-in-chief posing for a picture with Major Adam Horn's parents, wife, and children. The moment coming after a trip to the U.S. Naval Academy from which Major Horn graduated back in 2005. He is now making his final day on duty with this special photo after serving 5 years. What a great shot. And what a great moment for that family.
What a cool job, too.
Yeah.
HMX-1.
Fly the president around?
Very cool.
Love it. All right, well, lots this morning, including this. James Clapper defending former President Obama amid accusations of spying on the Trump campaign. Listen.
I am sure President Obama had no knowledge whatsoever of an informant.
Dan Bongino's got something to say about that. You're not going to want to miss it.
Plus, the video's crazy. A passenger fights with a flight attendant in midair. What sparked this brawl at 30,000 feet? Coming up. And who won?
Good question.
I'm sure President Obama had no knowledge whatsoever of an informant. The FBI has dozens, maybe hundreds of informants who provide very valuable information and do so in a legitimate way.
That was the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, defending his old boss, claiming President Obama knew nothing about the FBI informant, otherwise known as a spy, possibly infiltrating the Trump campaign. But is that possible?
Here to weigh in, former Secret Service agent and host of the Dan Bongino Show, Dan Bongino. Dan, you've been a little bit fired up about this, but let me ask you simply, someone who covertly collects information in a organization, let's say the Trump 2016 campaign, what do you call that?
Griff, it's a spy. A spy. You know, you understand, Griff, we are all dumber for having this conversation. I'm sorry. Abby, Pete, you are going to lose 10 IQ points after this conversation. This is the dumbest conversation in American history. Let me just lay it out really simple for the liberals and their goofballs in the media, the Pravda media that are covering up for this. The FBI had a person who was getting information on the Trump team that was being used to spy on the Trump team. That's called a spy. S-P-Y, a spy. I cannot believe we're seriously having this conversation. Let me just say one more thing. The media, you're a joke. You're an embarrassment. You're a disgrace to the country for not covering this honestly. This is a huge scandal that you're burying just to save face for the Obama administration. It's disgusting.
They call it a confidential human source. But what would the rationale? So their rationale is we're defending the country and defending the Trump campaign against Russia, right? Then why didn't they tell Trump's team that they were being surveilled from the inside if they were protecting them?
Pete, even worse, right? If that was their MO, well, we were just protecting you from Russia by implanting a spy in your campaign. You're using a euphemism of a confidential human informant. Why didn't they put one in the Hillary campaign? Hillary had deep ties to Russia. Hillary had deep ties to Ukraine. Hillary's foundation had taken millions from Russia. Pete, a very serious, legitimate, I know I can be sarcastic, and I'm definitely really PO'd about this story, but I'm serious. Why not insert a spy into Hillary's campaign to protect them from Russia too?
Dan,
nobody will answer that question.
You listen to James Clapper there on CNN, and look, he said a lot of things about President Trump, calling him an agent to the Russians as well. But is it possible when he says that he believes that former President Barack Obama didn't know that anything was going on at the time? Is it possible that Obama didn't know?
No, Abby, it's not. And we've been lied to at every significant stage of this operation. Susan Rice lied, saying they knew nothing about unmasking and that it didn't happen. That was a lie. John Brennan lied, claiming he didn't know about the dossier. He didn't have details on it. That was a lie. Jim Clapper lied about his contacts with the media, and he's lying about this too. And Abby, you know what is Exhibit 1 that Obama knew? The FBI said Obama wanted to know. Remember the texts from the two investigators, Strzok and Page, that were intercepted in the IG investigation? One of the texts says, POTUS, President of the United States, wants to know everything. This is another lie, and the media will cover it up like they always do.
Good point, Dan. And we may hear from Bill Priestep, who was Strzok and Page's boss.
And if you want to hear the whole thing on this, Dan, your podcast just from yesterday is fantastic, laying it all out there. Dan Bongino Show. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Fired up as always. Dan, good to see you.
All right, you've probably heard about this 30-year-old man evicted from his parents' house. Mike Rose says this is a symptom of the safe space movement, and it's affecting millennials graduating from college.
We've got a panel of CEOs with some luck.
And that's how many people are traveling for the Memorial Day weekend. According to AAA, this year's amount is up 5% from last year, the highest in more than a dozen years. Next, $2.97. That's the national average gas price travelers will pay at the pump. Mississippi has the lowest average at $2.66 per gallon, and California, surprisingly, has the highest at $3.73. Finally, 102. That's how many members of Congress have served in the U.S. military. You can find veterans on both sides of the aisle in the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and National Guard. And you, Pete, you're a veteran as well.
Thank you very much, sir, but not a member of Congress. All right. One of the biggest news stories this week was an upstate New York couple who had to take their 30-year-old son to court in order to finally get him evicted from their home. TV host Mike Rowe says this is just part of the problem with the younger generation. Listen.
I think that probably does have something to do with the expectations that have evolved out of the safe space movement. Safety first is the stuff of idiocy. It allows us to begin to believe that somebody other than us might care more about our well-being than we do. And the minute we buy into that nonsense, then we embrace the warm grip of complacency.
So well said. So during graduation season, when millennials will enter the real world, what advice do we have for them? Let's bring in a panel of business leaders. Kristen Ruby is CEO of Ruby Media Group, and Patrick McGinnis is founder and managing director of Durago Advisors and the author of The 10% Entrepreneur. Thank you both for joining us this morning. So, Chris, the 30-year-old thing as an absurd example, yet it does seem like you got young people sometimes entering the workforce without some of the basic skills they're going to need to succeed. What's your message to them?
So my message to them is really that you can't outsource your career to someone else, right? It's not that your parents can do it for you. It's not that a business coach can do it for you. It's not even that your mentor can do it for you. The only one who can really do it is you. You have to do it for yourself. You have to build your own career. You have to put yourself out there. You can't outsource any of it, and you need to take responsibility. And that actually starts with building a personal brand.
Patrick, how did we get here to this point where these absurd examples are telling us sort of more subtle truths about generations of Americans?
You know, I'm sure you both are familiar with the term FOMO, fear of missing out. Believe it or not, I actually invented that term when I was a graduate student. And what I've noticed as I talk to young people is that FOMO is extending into all aspects of their careers. Largely entrepreneurship, right? You have 66% of students want to be entrepreneurs when they graduate, but they're not willing to go out and build those basic skills. So what I tell young people is go get a job, learn the basics, and then think about entrepreneurship. Maybe even explore it on the side in your part-time before going full-time.
Ruby, what are you seeing from the millennials you're hiring right now? What are you seeing?
So, I think millennials really, have a bad rap out there, and it's hard for them, right? Because there are some of them that are such hard workers, right? So I don't want to make a statement that, overgeneralizes what I see in all millennials. But unfortunately, I think as a culture, what we have is an issue of prolonged adolescence, right? And again, that's not only the millennials' fault, that's also the parents' fault. They're equally to blame in that. I mean, you have a whole industry right now for adult summer camp. That's adults going to that, right?
That's a real thing?
That's a real thing. Wow. And that's not only millennials, that's literally for adults.
But you say it's hard for millennials. Patrick, wouldn't you say we're being almost too easy on them and therefore it's difficult for them?
I think every young generation, the generation that comes before it, looks at their flaws, criticizes them. If we think about the good qualities of the millennials, the fact that they're flexible and creative, that they're willing to take risks, that they're willing to build their careers in an environment that doesn't offer the stability that their parents had in terms of careers that were far more predictable. I find that actually, I think they'll be more resilient than we expect. The problem is we've got to have their parents get out of the way, let them go out there, take risks, fail, and maybe even, have to be evicted from their parents' house.
By the way, on that story, both of you, who's to blame? Is it the 30-year-old or the parents?
The parents.
Parents?
That's an easy one.
Yes, the parents.
Obviously you got to this point because of some sort of complacency by the parents too.
Yeah, I really go by the sink or swim, methodology here. And I think that if you think that you have a support system, you really don't have the motivation and ambition to work.
Interesting. Good stuff. Kristen Ruby and Patrick McGinnis, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank
you.
Some
good, simple, hard truths. I like it. All right, well, now to a Fox News alert. Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon, they met overnight. It's a new development. So what does that mean for Trump and the prospects of that meeting on the 12th? Our next guest worked for the Reagan administration and says Trump can take a page from the Reagan playbook. Plus, leave the hot dogs and hamburgers at home. The Washington Post wants your next cookout to have carrot dogs. We're not kidding. One of their people that writes about food says, replace the hot dog with a carrot. Your emails are pouring in. There's no carrot dogs on our plaza, of course. We're heading back outside for our Memorial Day weekend summer kickoff barbecue bash, and we're doing it right. No carrots, only pig butt.
Friends are coming over tonight.
They're as American as carrot hot dogs. These carrot hot dogs smell just delicious.
Yeah. All right. So if you open up your Washington Post, they have a new suggestion for you because Memorial Weekend is all about the start of the summer. Well, most importantly, it's about those that have sacrificed for this country and our freedoms. But it's about grilling and being together as family. Pete, as you know, eating as much meat as possible. Here's what they say, though.
This is their headline from the Washington Post. The most unexpected and welcome guest at your next cookout could be carrot dogs.
They say every steak needs a good, what do they say? Every steak needs a good sauce, even a cauliflower steak, because that's a new thing on the menu.
Cauliflower steak?
Pete's taking a bite.
Oh, nice crunch.
Yummy.
All right, you're also supposed to cook the carrot and marinate it in something hopefully yummy. Not a raw carrot.
The geniuses over there, it's like the foodies, it's got to be sophisticated. What? Don't mess with the hot dog.
So we've talked about having a Fox and Friends weekend barbecue at Pete's house. What would you do if I brought a whole plate of carrots for you to grill?
Yes, and
I would be, out of graciousness and love for you, I would try it.
Also, for the kids.
Abby, thank you so much.
No, you wouldn't.
Maybe not.
For the kids, for the little ones, you can cut the carrot up, clearly, to get your carrot.
Baby carrot hot dog.
You know, there are, a number of vegetarians out there, people with allergies. So if you can't have meat.
What goes on it, though? I think I
That's
feel
the
like
question.
ranch dressing would probably be the
Or
right.
like a miso glaze.
What's a miso glaze?
Okay.
I really don't know what a miso
Do you know what
glaze
miso is?
Nope.
Okay. You know
I
what?
would say cheese maybe could help out here. A slice of
could be good.
American cheese.
It's fermented soybean, by the way.
Cheese and
Have you ever had like a
soybean.
miso soup?
Nope.
Okay.
I've had a lot of hot dogs, though. Just had my first carrot hot dog, too.
Okay.
Email us at friends@foxnews.com if you are having carrot hot dogs. We really recommend it. It's
And
quite
what
nice.
sauce? You're still eating it. So it is okay?
Right, it's my hands.
Okay.
You know?
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Send us your thoughts. You enjoy that carrot hot dog.
Will.
I'm going to bring you some of the headlines we're following this morning, starting with this one. Punches flying literally in midair. A flight attendant refuses to serve a drunk passenger more booze, forcing him to become belligerent. Watch.
Yes, I'm your bartender. I'm not bringing any more beers. We'll be there in an hour.
Well, that man's rampage lasting for more than an hour on the American Airlines flight to Miami from the Virgin Islands. Police handing him over to the FBI once that aircraft landed. Yikes. And you can now legally smoke medical marijuana in the state of Florida. The judge ruling the ban unconstitutional. It applies to patients who have a prescription. Voters legalized medical marijuana back in 2016. The state's Department of Health is planning to appeal that ruling. And it is a dream come true for this 91-year-old World War II veteran, Staff Sergeant Tulma Sadler, receiving his high school diploma 7 decades later.
If you want to go on to college, you got to have a diploma. It's a big world out there. Get your share.
And he did it. Sadler dropped out at the age of 16 to join the Army, but thanks to Oklahoma's veteran high school diploma program, anyone who left high school to serve in the war gets a chance to earn their diploma. How great is that?
Yeah, of course.
All right, those are your headlines. Rick, out to you for some barbecue. I can smell it from inside. It smells so good.
You know what? You need to be out here eating, Abby,
I know.
because it's really good. Fox and Friends Barbecue Bash is continuing. Joining us this hour is Andy Husbands, chef and owner of the Smoke Shop Barbecue. He's also known as Boston's King of Q. That's it?
Sounds good to me.
So Boston, people aren't thinking of as like the great barbecue place, but you're like a national champ.
Yeah, I'm a member of a world champion barbecue team, believe it or not. We were the first non-Southern team to win the world championships.
And I noticed there's like 5, I count them, trophies out here.
This is just a small amount of our trophies that we have.
Have you guys been eating any of this morning?
Yeah, it's been amazing.
All right, okay, so it's good. So what makes yours good?
You know, it's how we do it. Slow and low. We use wood from New Hampshire. A lot of love, a lot of passion.
Okay,
Look at
everybody
that.
says slow and low. Everybody says love and passion, but wood from New Hampshire. Like, I've never heard that one before. Is that a thing?
There's a lot of wood in New Hampshire,
There
believe
is.
it or not.
But
Yes,
is
it
like
is a
New
thing.
Hampshire wood different than, like Nash, Tennessee?
We like to stay local, and it kind of makes sense for us to use what we do. Here, let me give you a little bit of rub on that. And
Okay.
There you go. This is a little beef ribs. So we do these big beef ribs every Saturday night. They're about a pound or so.
Wow.
Try.
All right, Boston. Who knew? But it's good. What's it called?
The Smoke Shop Barbecue.
The Smoke Shop Barbecue in Boston. When you're there, go check it out. Pete?
All right, Rick, good man. Boston Barbecue. Joining us now is Glenn Rolnick. He's the executive chef of Virgil's Real Barbecue right here in New York City. Chef, thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you.
You're
for having
literally
us.
right around the corner.
Yeah,
here.
we're right around the corner in Times Square,
I have
44th
been to
Street.
your restaurant. It is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. We're right down the street from famous Carmine's.
That's true. So what's special about your meat?
Well, we have two 1,400-pound Southern Pride smokers in the back of our kitchen.
Can I see that sometime?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'll get lost in those
I
things.
bet.
Yeah, serious, they're big. So over at Virgil's, we slow smoke everything. So we have two kinds of wood. We use hickory wood and we use fruit wood, which we use cherry wood. So we slow smoke, so everything is moist, flavorful, a really nice bark on there, so we got a lot of flavor.
The bark is key. How do you get the bark on?
Wait, hold on. I got it. He's looking like he's enjoying that too much.
A really nice piece over
There
there.
we go.
All right?
Thank you.
The bark, the important part of the bark is it's actually the seasoning that's caramelized. So whatever you put in the dry rub has to be able to caramelize. So we put it on a very low, and the smoke also helps brown it. So you're browning it from the caramelization and also what's the ingredient ingredients in the dry rub.
It's juicy on the inside.
Very tasty, very slow smoked.
Thank you. This is fantastic. And you've got a location for Virgil's in Las Vegas and the Bahamas as well.
Las Vegas. We're in the Lake Promenade in Bahamas, the Atlantis, which I'm going to next week to visit.
There you go. Abby, these are fantastic. We're bringing you some.
A little better than a raw carrot. All right, Griff B, thanks so much. Coming up on the show, Fox News alert, Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon meeting overnight. This is all breaking. We're going to bring that to you. What does this all mean for President Trump? Our next guest worked for the Reagan administration and says Trump can take a page from the Reagan playbook. More on that next. Plus, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Sean Spicer, and a lot more coming up on a Fox and
Back. Well, a country music star will be the opening act for President Trump. Trace Atkins set to perform at Tuesday's Make America Great Again rally in Nashville. The Trump team says Atkins will set the perfect patriotic tone and be a treat for the president's supporters, certainly. And outspoken Hollywood conservative Tim Allen says his show Last Man Standing will tackle the gun debate. The actor speaking about the reboot in an interview with the Closer Weekly. Quote, he says this: "We have so much left in our tank. There were a lot of stories we hadn't gotten to." The ABC sitcom was canceled after 6 seasons, but revived by Fox earlier this month. It's going to be interesting. Abby, down to you.
It's a funny show if you haven't seen it. Thank you, Pete. All right, right now to a Fox News alert. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon meeting at the DMZ overnight. So what does this say about President Trump's foreign policy? Our next guest says that she sees similarities to President Reagan's handling of his summit with the Soviet Union's Gorbachev. So how does President Trump's foreign policy compare to Reagan's? Here to discuss, author of The President Will See You Now, My Stories and Lessons from Ronald Reagan's Final Years, Peggy Grandy joins us right now. Peggy, always good to have you with us. And what a timely time to join us just with this breaking news off the top. Something that Ronald Reagan and President Trump do have in common is their unpredictability, something that Reagan was criticized for, something that President Trump is often criticized for. But can that work to their advantage when it comes to diplomacy and what we're dealing with right now with North Korea?
Well, I think there's always a strong methodology behind what you see on the external, and there's so much more behind the scenes. You know, Ronald Reagan believed in face-to-face diplomacy, and we see President Trump definitely wanting to do that as well. He believed there was nothing that couldn't be resolved if two leaders sat across the table from each other and talked things out. And so I think it's very important for President Trump to get across that table, and I think we're going to eventually see that happen. But diplomacy takes time, and we need to let this relationship play out from afar, and then eventually I think we will see them across the table from each other.
Yeah, and so often we can learn lessons from history. Take us back. Remember 1986 when Ronald Reagan was trying to negotiate and meet with Gorbachev. That was what back in 1986 got criticized. He ended up walking away from the deal. He went all the way over to Iceland and walked away. And a lot of people said it was a big embarrassment for Reagan. I want to read a quote from the Rolling Stone from a piece written back then. They say, when Ronald Reagan emerged from his bargaining session with Gorbachev, the president looked stunned like a small boy who had burned his fingers playing with a light socket. Reagan came home empty-handed from Iceland. We now all know how it ended ultimately, but what do you make of that period in history and what we can maybe learn from it today?
Well, Reagan, of course, took a lot of criticism from the press, but if you look at the foundation that was laid there in Reykjavik, it led to the INF Treaty, which was signed just a short year later. And for him, he believed that the no deal was better than a bad deal, and he was willing to walk away. Eastern Europe, you'll come to this gate. He was providing an incentive and a magnet to cooperate rather than it being completely confrontational. So definitely some parallels there. And interestingly enough, with both presidents, if you look at the presidential seal itself, in the talons of the eagles, you have the olive branch of peace, but in the other one, you have the arrows of war. And I think that President Trump has made it very clear he's extending an olive branch of peace, but is unafraid to use the arrows of war if needed.
Yeah, I always love looking back at history, and particularly the way the media handled it back then and how much Ronald Reagan was criticized. And ultimately, he was successful, and it was the end of the Cold War. What can we learn about media today and how diplomacy is being handled? Because as you know very well from your years working with Reagan, these things take time. It is a very delicate balance. Do you think the media is playing their role the right way at this moment? Or do you think people need to have a little more patience? Let this thing play out.
Diplomacy does take time. It does take patience. And diplomacy at the end of the day is all about relationships, not about rhetoric, and it's not about politics. It's very personal. Right. And that was diplomacy the Reagan way. And so as we know in our own lives, relationships take time, and so you can imagine even more so on the world stage. You know, I know that one page that Donald Trump will be taking from President Reagan's playbook, and that's regardless of what happens, regardless what comes from any eventual summit, he will definitely be in a position to trust but verify, and that's something that is going to be crucial moving forward, because we understand a lot of promises have been made in the past that have not been kept, and I'm sure he intends to verify.
Yeah, you're right. It's all about these face-to-face meetings, and breaking news overnight, that's exactly what happened between North and South Korea. Where it goes from here, we will see. But Peggy, it's great to get your perspective on this morning. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, coming up, did you see this moment? President Trump meeting a family who adopted a little girl born with an opioid dependency. What did he say to them? Well, the entire family joins us live. It's an interview you don't want to miss. And does your family road trip, does it go something like this?
I saw them when you and Mom were trying to fold the map.
Audrey, when they close the road, they put up big signs like this one.
That was totally my family growing up. Before you hit the road, Kurt the cyber guy has got some great advice for dealing with a car full of screaming kids. That's next.
I saw them when you and Mom were trying to fold the map.
Audrey, when they close the road, they put up big signs like this one.
Oh, so my family growing up. Well, nowadays it might be tempting to hand your kids a tablet to keep them entertained in the car, but the American Academy of Pediatrics, they say, don't do that so fast.
That's right. New guidelines say babies younger than 18 months should avoid it altogether, and older kids should keep the screen time below 2 hours a day so you can keep your kids off the tablet. Let's bring in Kurt, the cyber guy. Kurt, really?
Griff, you know what this is. This is America's perfectly square pacifier.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
This and a tablet. So we turn to it constantly for the little ones in the back seat on a road trip. We turn to it often at moments where you're like waiting at the doctor's office. But what this new information is realizing that for children at birth through 18 months, it's could be detrimental for them to be using a tablet too much. Sure, the car ride's fine. Sure, a doctor's office is fine temporarily. But what they're finding is that the parents using technology in front of little ones and FaceTime or video chats are perfectly fine, because how else are you going to talk with the grandparents abroad, right? Absolutely. So you just have to do it. Plus, it does offer that connection.
So what's the alternative? If you are in a car, so many people are driving this weekend, for example, and you've got screaming kids in the background, and you immediately want to pull out that tablet, that's all you got. What's the alternative?
There is not. There's no real alternative to it.
Yes, there is.
At least you're honest.
Allow kids to learn to be bored a little bit.
Yeah.
Sit there, look out the window, kid. Talk to each other, read a book. There are alternatives.
There are actually, and what you just said is actually exactly the point they're trying to make, which is if you let us just be together, we're going to figure it out. Stop throwing technology at your kids as a pacifier, because that inevitably is going to create distance between you and your child, and between your child's ability to cope with life later on. Because instead of being like this to solve a problem, they're going to like, hold on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have the answer there.
Okay, kids, let's play the license plate game. Doesn't work.
For the 15th time.
Right.
That's right. But it's hard. You can deprogram too. I mean, a lot of us got to the point where a tablet is just the answer. You got to probably wean kids off of that.
You know, the time that a tablet works really well, and especially for 18 months
Kurt,
up to 6 years.
Black, I hate to cut you off. Just like that clip where National Lampoon goes off the rails. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you, Griff.
Cut the tablet time.
All right. Well, next we've got a Fox News alert. Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon meet overnight. Dr. Sebastian Gorka and former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer live here to react. Plus, Neil Cavuto joins us next hour.